The Soviet Gulag Archipelago stands as a haunting testament to the depths of human suffering and the extremes of state repression. It was not merely a collection of labor camps. It was a sprawling network of despair that spanned the vast, unforgiving terrain of Siberia and beyond. The conditions within these camps were notoriously brutal, encapsulating the very essence of inhumanity. As millions of prisoners found themselves trapped in this hellish landscape, their lives became a struggle against the elements, against starvation, and against the oppressive weight of a regime that viewed them as expendable. The climate in which the camps were situated was as harsh as the treatment meted out to the inmates. Many of these camps were located in remote areas where winters were piercingly cold and summers could be oppressively hot. The barracks, where prisoners were crammed together, offered little refuge from the elements. These overcrowded shelters were poorly insulated, and the scant bedding provided was often little more than a thin mat on a hard floor. The lack of warmth in winter and the sweltering conditions in summer created an environment ripe for disease and despair. The prisoners, stripped of their dignity, were forced to endure these inhumane living conditions day after day, their bodies weakening from exposure and neglect. Food scarcity was another grim reality of life in the Gulag. The rations allotted to prisoners were meager and often based on their work output. This created a vicious cycle. The more a prisoner struggled to meet the demanding quotas set by their overseers, the less sustenance they received. Starvation was a constant companion, gnawing at their insides and sapping their strength. In these camps, the concept of nourishment was twisted into a cruel joke, as the very act of trying to survive became a laborious task. Malnutrition was rampant, and the toll it took on the human body was devastating. Many prisoners found themselves in a state of perpetual hunger, their bodies deteriorating as they toiled under the watchful eyes of guards who took pleasure in their suffering. Forced labor was the backbone of the Gulag system. Prisoners were often assigned to grueling tasks that required immense physical exertion, such as mining, logging, or constructing infrastructure. They worked long hours, 12 to 16 hours a day, in conditions that would have been unbearable for the strongest of men. The tools they were given were often primitive, and the work was dangerous. Under the constant threat of punishment, prisoners pushed themselves to the brink of collapse, knowing that failure to meet a quota could mean a further reduction in their already paltry rations. This relentless pressure created an atmosphere of desperation, where the will to survive clashed with the harsh realities of their existence. Brutality was woven into the fabric of camp life. Guards wielded their power with an iron fist, employing torture and violence as methods of discipline. Beatings were commonplace, and executions were not uncommon. The fear of arbitrary punishment loomed large over the prisoners, many of whom were already traumatized by their initial arrests. In addition to the guards, the camps were often populated by criminal elements that preyed on the weaker inmates. Gangs formed within the camps, and the violence among prisoners added another layer of terror to an already brutal existence. The struggle for survival often meant that one had to navigate not only the oppressive regime, but also the treachery of fellow inmates. The spread of disease was another grim reality of life in the Gulag. The combination of poor sanitation, malnutrition, and lack of medical care created a perfect storm for illness. Typhus, tuberculosis, and dysentery ravaged the population, and the death toll was staggering. During the Great Purge and World War II, the death rate soared, with many prisoners succumbing to exhaustion, cold, or starvation. The camps became graveyards, where the living envied the dead, and the line between life and death blurred in the face of relentless suffering. Psychologically, the Gulag system was designed to break individuals. It fostered an environment where betrayal became a survival tactic. Prisoners were encouraged to inform on one another, creating a culture of mistrust and paranoia. This erosion of camaraderie led many to lose their sense of identity and humanity amidst the chaos. Families of prisoners faced their own persecution outside the camps, often ostracized by society for their association with the so-called enemies of the state. The psychological scars left by this experience were profound, affecting not only the individuals who endured the Gulag, but also their families and communities. For those who were released from the Gulag, life after imprisonment was often marked by the indelible stain of their past. Many returned to a society that viewed them with suspicion and disdain, permanently labeled as enemies of the people. The impact of their experiences lingered long after they left the camps, as they struggled to reintegrate into a world that had moved on without them. The death of Stalin in 1953 and subsequent political shifts brought some relief, with mass amnesties and the gradual dismantling of the Gulag system. Yet, the legacy of the Gulag remained, a dark chapter in history that would not be easily forgotten. The horrors of the Gulag were meticulously documented by Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn in his seminal work, The Gulag Archipelago. His writings brought the grim realities of Soviet repression to light, revealing the scale of suffering endured by countless individuals. Solzhenitsyn's courage in exposing the truth played a crucial role in informing the world about the atrocities committed under Stalin's regime. The Gulag Archipelago serves not only as a historical account, but also as a poignant reminder of the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. Through the lens of those who suffered, we are called to remember, to reflect, and to ensure that such horrors are never repeated.